You know, we don't have a lot of happy days in this class, right? I mean, a class about physical climatology and climate change, it's pretty much all bad news, right? Hey, most of your environmental science majors, you get what you dance with who you came with, right? I mean, the reality is you're an environmental science major. You know, there are not a lot of happy answers here. But in general, these carbon cycle engineering strategies, they look pretty attractive, actually. And the reason why, in the great scheme of things, these are not such terrible choices is because they're actually directly dealing with the carbon dioxide itself rather than just attacking the warming. I mean, all those solar management strategies, which frankly didn't sound so bad either, well, they were actually kind of only going after the symptom, the warming of the planet. Carbon cycle engineering is actually going on after at least the gases that are causing the warming. I mean, it'd be better if we were actually, like, you know, using less fossil fuels and so on, but hey, this is not so bad. In the great scheme of things, this is not the worst solution we've ever seen. And you'd be forgiven for saying these geoengineering strategies in general haven't sounded so bad. I mean, you would be forgiven if you kind of scoffed at them when we started talking about them, but the more you hear, the more you're starting to think, hey, this is not so bad, this is pretty attractive. But it's a little bit shameful, because part of the reason why these geoengineering strategies don't seem awful is because they don't require big changes from you and me, right? I mean, I get to keep driving my car, and you get to keep driving your car, and we all get to have air conditioning, because somebody else is solving our problem, right? We're just paying for somebody else to solve our problems for us. Well, that's called Western civilization. We love those kinds of answers, right? So, I mean, from a science point of view, these may not be the best answers, but they're also not terrible answers. But from a policy point of view, these are hardly terrible. You'd also be forgiven for thinking that these geoengineering solutions are somewhat attractive because, well, frankly, they work pretty fast. Whether we're talking about building a shade for the Earth, which we haven't gotten to yet, or whether we're talking about enhancing the albedo of clouds, you know what? As soon as the albedo of the clouds is enhanced by adding those aerosols to the atmosphere, the temperature of the Earth starts going down, or at least going up less fast. Okay? Same with like adding sulfate aerosols to the stratosphere. As soon as we start doing that, things get better. This is not asking people to make a mitigation effort now that might make changes for your grandchildren or your great-great-grandchildren. This is something, I mean, the politics here are better, right? The benefits, if you're going to ask people to make sacrifices, it is easier to ask them to make sacrifices about things that are going to take effect in their lifetime. Okay? Another real benefit to these geoengineering solutions is they help everybody. If I make some kind of new law that economically incentivizes some sort of geoengineering, let's say carbon capture, air capture was the terminology we used in this reading. Air capture. That doesn't just benefit me, it benefits everybody around the world. All the people, regardless of whether they had the money to pay for air capture technology, benefit from the fact that I paid for that. Okay? It doesn't just benefit the rich people. This is not the kind of thing where the rich people make their situation better and the poor people can just go, no, this benefits everybody. Okay? So if we can find ways to make this work, there's real reasons why this is kind of our most politically savory option. Palatable might be better than savory, right? This actually kind of makes sense from the politics of the whole thing. But that doesn't mean that there aren't problems. You could see this coming a mile away, right? Clearly, because we're not doing a lot of geoengineering, you must have known that there's reasons why we don't do a lot of geoengineering, and part of it is who gets to decide? Who gets to decide what we're aiming for? You know, this is a complicated issue in climate change in general, but there's always winners and losers. We make it sound unambiguously like climate change equals bad, but climate change equals bad for the system. But that doesn't mean that there aren't winners and losers. It just means that the losers outnumber the winners. But there's people who are doing better because of climate change. There are places that are getting more rain and have better crops and have a better lifestyle because of the warming. And we'll have even better in the future. if we decide to do global geoengineering, we're consciously making a choice to pick who the winners and the losers are. This same discussion, by the way, can be had about anything. I mean, I like to talk about hurricanes in the same kind of context. We think of hurricanes as being an unambiguously bad thing when they make landfall, but it's unambiguously bad for the system. Okay? Individuals within it might be doing better. There might be people who get as long as they lived through the storm, their insurance will give them a new house. And for that matter, if you're the guy who builds houses, you're having a heck of a day, right? You've got more work than you know what to do with. When you start doing geoengineering, you're picking the winners and the losers. There's a whole world of ethics and complications there. What happens too if geoengineering ends up hurting one group while helping another? What if, based on our geoengineering solution, we change the distribution of rainfall in the monsoon in such a way that suddenly there's a refugee crisis in India and Pakistan? Two nuclear-armed neighbors don't get along very well. I mean, there's the ethics of causing these kinds of problems over I didn't have a very fuel-efficient car. That's another whole course, right? This is not a simple solution. Most of these geoengineering solutions also pose plenty of other risks to other aspects of the environment. Let's talk about iron fertilization of the ocean. You're effectively treating the ocean like a field, right? You're picking what species thrive. I mean, just because it wasn't removing enough carbon from the atmosphere for your point of view, doesn't mean that there weren't already species there living and thriving in their own environment with their own rate of competition, with the nutrients they like. You're picking that they lose. And that part of the food cycle, of the food chain, the food web or whatever is falling apart and so on. You're making that choice. And the same can be said of any of the other risks of the environment. Planting trees. I mean, what if the tree species that you're choosing is invasive? What if you plant ash trees in the area, and it turns out in your area, emerald ash borers are a big problem. And now by planting more ashes, you've created all this habitat for emerald ash borers who then start attacking other trees as well. I mean, there's environmental costs associated with all of these decisions. You're kind of picking the winners and the losers here. We're not so good at that. And as a consequence, we also just generally don't take on those battles. The future may not give us the luxury of getting to choose those things, or getting to have those moral hesitancies about those sorts of things. We may not have those kind of luxuries in the future. Yuck. Alright, next time we're going to talk more about geoengineering and what it means for the future, and what, in general, an environmental perspective on global change brings to the discussion. But before we do that, let's answer a couple more questions. Question 5. Who gets the environmental benefits associated with reforesting an acre of trees? Is it A, just the people who live near that newly reestablished forest? Is it B, just the people in the rich countries who paid for that reforestation? Or is it C, everyone? Who benefits when we add an acre of trees? Make a choice from those 3 options and get a little feedback before we go on to question 6.